right, Howard, we're out at your farm, Faithfull Farms.
Yep.
Do you want to tell everybody just a little bit what's going on here?
Yeah, so what's going on right here? Faithfull Farms, we're in our second year of launching this farm venture. And this is a venture between me and my wife. And of course, we have a lot of friends to help out, community members. It's just been a whole team effort to make this possible. This particular land that we're on right now, this belongs to my church. And the church is called Life Church. And we worship in the Carver Arts Center. And so this land right now, I'm the caretaker, and so part of Faithfull Farms' mission is that we take care of this land, we steward the land, and we turn it into a really productive and vibrant land where we can show sustainability in agriculture, where we're able to help people to get a connection to the land, whether it's through the products or through physically being here and just experiencing, that relationship with the land.
Very cool, man. And how did you get to North Carolina? And I know you have an interesting story there. So,
how did I get here in North Carolina? That's a long story, but I would say the short version is that I lived in New York City for most of my childhood and older teen years, and decided to leave the city and kind of find my way south and came here. Then I went to Alamance Community College for culinary arts. And then eventually, of course, kind of found my way back into farming after settling down and having a family. So it's been a journey, but the journey really started back in Jamaica, where, my dad, was basically a homesteader, stay-at-home dad. And so I grew up in that rural agrarian society, where, most people farmed, their food. We traded, with each other. So today it's kind of like doing the same thing, but, but more deeply focused on community work in terms of building relationship with customers, building relationship with the church, and just everyone around, and how we can be better as community, working together to find solutions for our common problems.
Cool. So do you think that lifestyle growing up and that community has sort of influenced your venture through the culinary arts too?
Oh yes, absolutely. Both my parents were great cooks. My mom was a great baker. In particular, my dad, I would say he was more of the culinary expertise. He was really precise in the kitchen. So for me, as I got older, cooking was just a normal way of life for me, and the professional part made sense as I got older and kind of ventured out into that space. And I realized that I'm a people's person, so I really don't like working by myself. I've tried that and it just didn't work with the IT sector. So kind of ventured back into food, and of course food is of course connected to the land directly. And so today I still do both in terms of cooking, teaching, but also farming. So it's kind of a mashup of all the things that I love to do, and I'm able to do that today. So that's great.
Cool. Seems like you caught the farming bug pretty hard quickly, which is amazing, man. This place is great. And I know you're talking off camera a little bit about all of your expansion plans and sort of ways of growing more food and connecting more people with the land. And I think that's really important with the community here at your church too, right?
Yes. So, going forward, I think it's just how can we go forward as a sustainable community? How can we grow food year-round, and doing it in a way that's impacting the land negatively, but also to how can we make the land better as we grow every year. So I think it's important that we focus on a sustainability model. So right now we're not doing anything too permanent here. We're trying to figure out what works and can we duplicate that, and from there we can then scale up as we go into the future. So it's a long-term proposition, so we're not trying to take things fast, but trying to do them in a way that it makes sense and that it can be sustainable long-term.
Okay. And can you talk a little bit about your scale here and sort of your sales outlets?
So my scale here right now, I would say this is less than a half acre total in this production space, and the other properties, when they come online, will probably make us a full 1 acre market garden. For market outlets right now, our main outlet, I would say 95% of our sales come from the Carver Farmers Markets, and we do that year-round. During the regular season, between April and October, we do a few restaurants. The goal in this coming year as we expand is to increase more wholesale to restaurants and also to more wholesale into retail stores. And so that's our goal, is to grow slowly, one product at a time, and just find a way to do it well and then increasing the volume.
All right, Howard, we're in front of a couple of smaller tunnels here, and it looks like you're doing a lot of baby greens, arugula and some kale.
Yep.
Amazing looking yields here. This looks great.
Yeah, so here we found the sweet spot to be 6 rows on a bed, and this was planted by the pinpoint seeder, so they're approximately 4.5 inches apart. So it's enough spacing, and I think this is a spacing that we'll use year round, especially in the hot months where you have a lot more humidity. We we had a lot of losses last year because we were trying to pack in more, but we realized that 6 rows is a sweet spot. So we've adapted to that for especially the arugula and also the baby kales. So the yields are, I mean, are really amazing. Yeah. So that's something that we're really proud of, and we're just trying to duplicate it and get better at it every year. And so far, so good.
So you guys have a lot of tunnels here, and so you have these are 100-foot tunnels, and I think 6 beds in each tunnel.
6 in 2 and 4 in 1.
Okay.
Yep.
And so this would be growing year-round in these tunnels, and you do shade cloth in the summer.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And so what do you got going on in these tunnels right now?
So in these tunnels right now, it's mostly greens. Particularly this one, we have a lot of lettuces. We have some parsley, dandelion greens, lots of salad mixes, some chard. So, and of course, we're going to add some root vegetables, potentially some hackerite turnips in this row here. So we keep these beds planted year round for maximum production. They just work, you know. So it's like, why not keep them packed? You know, summertime we want to do lettuce. In the middle of winter we want to do lettuce. You know, there is a big demand for that. And I think the big thing that we know that we have to meet is the year-round production of food consistently locally. And so we think that growing inside is the way to do that, so we don't have to ship, you know, all of the lettuce, you know, from California here. So, and we found a way to do it here, you know, so we're just going to try to figure out how can we replicate this system and then make it bigger, you know, so we can supply our local markets.
Can we talk a little bit about your no-till practices? I know I'm a huge fan, obviously, but I can tell that you're sort of in the same world.
Yeah, better soil in terms of the texture, in terms of fertility, in terms of just the soil life in general and the whole ecosystem. I think as a farmer, my job is to facilitate an environment that gets better and better every year for the microbes and ultimately the plants, which to me are the byproduct of the soil itself. So no-till, I think, gives me the ability to do less work and actually have better results. And I think the big thing that helps for me is the landscape fabric, especially this time of year when it's going to be down for about maybe 5 months or so. So the soil stays covered, it somewhat stays warm, especially during the daytime when you can actually heat up, you know, the surface of the soil. So the soil never really gets cold, especially inside the house. And your weed beds, I mean, are almost like to zero. I mean, we can probably count the weeds in here. So I think overall no-till helps to cut down the seed bank for weeds, helps with fertility, and of course you're not tilling, so one less thing to do. So I'm all about less work, more efficiency, and ultimately better outcomes across the board.
Yeah, so I know there's a lot of talk about, you know, with no-till systems of putting the work up front to save you time down the road. So for you, it's prepping beds, no-till, landscape fabric, and then just letting it cruise through the winter.
Yeah. So it's definitely work up front, but when you do the numbers, it just makes sense. So for example, this house, we have a total of 6 beds. So we have, you know, the drip system. We have the overhead that we use briefly, but mostly drip now between November to April. So weeds are pretty much at a minimum. I mean, maybe in the walkway 1 or 2, but in the beds, I mean, 0. So it's just about harvesting and just maintaining throughout the winter, which is really easy farming.
Yeah, so I can tell you put a lot of time in just setting this tunnel up for winter growing. I mean, we have drip under the landscape fabric, we have overhead irrigation, we have the double cover with the low tunnels.
Yep.
So right now, while we're filming this, it's like mid to late November.
Yes.
And you guys will be growing here all winter, right?
Yep. Yeah, so these crops, they arrived, we got them from a company called Banner Seedlings, and they're out of Nebo, North Carolina. They're great. They sell organic seedlings. So we got them in late September, and we started planting in early October. And so that was about 5-6 weeks ago. And so these plants will stay in from early October all the way till April. So about 5.5 months of just continual production. So we've already started to harvest last week, and we'll continue to harvest every week for the next 5 months easily. So that's our busiest day of the week, is on a Friday when we're doing market harvesting, or if we have like a special order for a restaurant.
Cool. This tunnel looks amazing. Let's go look at some other stuff.
Oh yeah. So this area is our non-covered space. We have a total of 21 50-foot beds. And so right now, these are all late crops that we put in for this fall, a combination of broccoli, cauliflower. We hope that we may get something out of them, but they were already about 6 weeks late. So at the most right now, they're just keeping the soil active and covered, but there's a potential that we may have crazy, North Carolina weather and we might get something. At the bottom here, we have some carrots that turned out really well. So in the future, the goal is that whatever we have outside are things that are mostly weather resistant and can withstand, the torrential rains, the sudden freezes and so forth. So we think carrots and things like broccoli, which we don't do a lot of, are good candidates for things that are outdoor.
So what goes out here in the spring?
The springtime we're gonna flip, so we're gonna do 10 beds here, carrots, and then down there we'll do greens for spring going into summertime, and then we'll go back undercover with our summer lettuces and greens. So for me, I think being a farmer and having a farm is not just about producing a product. It's much more. I think we are resources that are in the community, and so therefore we have to really redefine what farms are. And so for me, a farm is a place of refuge for the community, a place of food production obviously, but it's a place of solace. It's a place where we can work on food justice, and for me that's a big part of it, where a lot of the people who have not access to good foods, they oftentimes get the residual of what we farmers grow, and they may get it through a third party where it's aftermarket or things are going bad, so it's then donated. And to me, I think it doesn't matter where you are on that wealth ladder, we should be able to get high quality foods for all people. So one of my initiatives is that in the future we should have areas that we're growing food just to meet a low income market or a particular part of our society that has challenges accessing fresh foods, so that way they can get the best quality food with dignity, and it's not just a farmer's leftover, but something that a farmer grows specifically for that population, just like a farmer does with any other population. So there isn't any kind of stipulations on who get the best quality food and who gets the leftovers.
All right, that's a beautiful idea, Howard, and thanks so much for having me today. And if people want to follow along with what you're doing, how can they do that?
Best way to follow us is on Instagram at Faithfull Farms, that's Faithfull with 2 L's. We're also on Facebook, and that's pretty much it. Okay. And if you want to get our stuff, we are at the local Carver Farmers Markets. Yep.
Okay, I'll leave links below for all that stuff.
All right.
Thanks, Howard.
Thanks.